3 sinister road trip encounters, unexplained horrors revealed in spine-chilling true tales. The Mitchell family was ready for adventure. Fresh from a quiet suburb in California, they piled into their trusty blue van, laughter mingling with the blasting music. Sunshine streamed through the windows as they settled in, filled with excitement for the open road ahead. Little did they know, the journey would soon turn into a nightmare they'd never forget. As they drove, each mile seemed to carry shadows of unease. They pulled into Miller's Creek to refuel, but the atmosphere shifted from bright and carefree to heavy and tense. The gas station stood eerily quiet, abandoned almost. An old man appeared, his wild graying hair framing a face that seemed dulled by time and despair. "Some roads are better left unexplored," he warned, voice quaking with urgency. The family exchanged uneasy glances, Jason's pulse quickening under the weight of the man's piercing stare. They shrugged it off, the sun no longer bright as they drove away, determination still pumping through them despite the sudden chill, but hours later, the sky grew dark and oppressive. They stumbled upon an abandoned rest stop wrapped in twisted trees. The air felt thick, as if the woods held their breath. Amelia snapped pictures of the dilapidated relic, capturing memories of forgotten laughter, but with each click, a discomfort burrowed under her skin. "Did you see that?" she asked, pointing to a strange shadow creeping between the trees in her photo. They laughed it off, but knowing voices rose, whispering anxiety as unease settled. As dusk fell, the Mitchells found themselves lost, their GPS malfunctioning like a bad omen. Panic gnawed at them as they sped past rotting homes and darkened woods. Jason gripped the armrest, heart racing, a car flanked them mirroring their every move. Their breaths became shallow, the creeping sense of being hunted rising like bile in their throats. "It's just another car," his mother tried to reassure them, but the shadows said otherwise, and then they saw him, that same old man from the gas station, standing on a corner with a chilling grin that sent goosebumps up Jason's spine. "Run," his lips whispered soundlessly. Their laughter faded, as dread clawed at their insides. Could it be? Jason thought, feeling the bonds of trust begin to fray within the family. His parents exchanged worried looks while Amelia shivered, clenching her camera like a lifeline. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. With terror filling their minds, hope dwindled. Shadows loomed larger than life. Doubt and fear coursed through them, twisting their memories into dark alleys. Each passing moment echoed with whispers, a folk story becoming a living horror. The van held them together, yet between them grew a chasm. Who could they trust when the very land they traveled was haunted by unseen terrors? Their summer trip, once filled with cherished anticipation, had transformed into an unspeakable horror that threatened to unravel them all. Each turn led them deeper into dread, as they realized the way out might not come without a terrible price. The tension in the van was electric, a raw anticipation that crackled in the air. Jason's heart raced as he stole quick glances at the rearview mirror, that same imposing old man now standing behind them, invisible yet unshakable in his hold on their thoughts. "Don't look back," he wanted to shout, but the dread had settled deep. Instead, he focused on the road, the headlights cutting through the encroaching darkness that felt alive, pulsating with malice. "Maybe we should turn around," his father's voice trembled, breaking the suffocating silence. "We can find another route, another place to sleep." "I'm not turning around," his mother snapped, eyes wide with a blend of fear and determination. The importance of pressing forward echoed between them, a conviction born from not wanting to look back at what might be following. "We need to keep going. We'll find something." The landscape continued to shift, wild trees becoming grotesque figures in the periphery of their vision. They formed a twisted forest, lean fingers reaching out, latching onto sanity, dragging it down into the abyss. Amelia's soft voice broke through the disquiet. What if we stop at the next rest area? No. Jason shouted, anxiety tightening around his throat. We can't stop. We just need to keep moving. But a darkness was brewing within him, feeding off their fears, igniting a fire that whispered the impossible. What if stopping meant surrendering? Then, the world outside shifted once more, headlights piercing a clearing where twisted shadows danced. A flicker of movement. Just off the path, they caught a glimmer of something. Two eyes, wide and reflective, deeper than any animal should dare. Did you see that? Jason gasped, panic overtaking him. What? His dad turned, eyes darting to the side. But confusion morphed into dread when the eyes disappeared. They pressed on, each corner of the road unraveling further, tilting into an uncanny nightmare. Jason peered into the darkness, expecting to see the old man standing watchfully among the trees, eager to warn them once more. Yet, instead, the trees hurled forward like grotesque sentinels, forming walls that closed in around them. Amelia, check your phone. Where are we? The blue light illuminated her face, but she hesitated, forehead creased. It's dead. It was fine a second ago. It can't be. This can't be happening. Jason's voice escalated, fury and fear tangling. The van bucked violently over a pothole, and his father wrestled with the wheel. Suddenly, the radio flickered on, static screeching wildly before morphing into muffled voices, an eerie chant that swelled and spiraled through the vehicle. Get out! Leave! The voices hissed, rising like smoke until Jason felt it clawing at him. Turn it off. His mother shouted, fear driving her words sharp. Hands trembling, Jason fumbled with the dials. One last twist, and the voices hissed away as quickly as they had appeared, leaving an unsettling silence. The world outside felt too quiet. Shadows clung to the edges of the road as they rolled past. Each shadow now seemed to whisper their secrets, pooling dread that no longer concealed its intent. They were close, closer than they'd ever been. And then came a sound. A low rustling, a brush against the van's side. Something moving, trailing them, breathing down their necks. Jason felt the grip of panic surge, so hot it clouded his vision. What was that? His voice quivered, hanging in the air like a trap. Just keep driving. We must be almost out of here. His father yelled, gripping the steering wheel tighter, knuckles white under the pressure of unbearable tension. But it was no use. They had become mired in an endless loop of horror, and the chase had only just begun. As they approached the next bend, a sudden glow revealed a sign that sent icy fingers down Jason's spine, "Welcome to Hollow Ridge." An unknown dread bubbled within him. We should have listened. What awaited them in this cursed town? And would they emerge from this road trip alive, or would Hollow Ridge swallow them whole? The van rolled into Hollow Ridge, headlights flickering against the surrounding gloom. The town lay shrouded in a thick mist, making it seem almost as if it were holding its breath, waiting. Jason strained to see through the fog, searching for signs of life, but the streets remained deserted. A chill crept through the air like a warning, sending shivers spiraling down his spine. Where is everyone? Amelia whispered, her eyes wide as she took in the eerie silence that enveloped them. Maybe it's too late, his mother suggested, casting a nervous glance at Jason's father, who remained fixated on the road ahead as if willing it to reveal some refuge. Each house they passed loomed like dark sentinels, their abandoned windows resembling vacant eyes watching their every move. It felt like an audience of shadows surrounding them, a palpable weight pressing down. Jason's heart pounded in his chest, each beat a reminder that they were not alone in this accursed place. What are we looking for? Jason finally burst out, desperation clawing at him. We can't just keep driving in circles. There's bound to be an inn or a place to stop, his mother replied, but her voice trembled. As if affirming his worst fears, the light sputtered, and the van's engine let out a growl before stalling unceremoniously. Great, just great. Jason muttered, fingers instinctively tightening around the door handle. "It's all right," his dad tried to sound confident but failed. His fingers fumbled with the ignition, turning it anxiously nothing. The engine was dead, the soft hum of the vehicle replaced by an unsettling silence. "Don't panic, we'll just get out and look around," his father decided, though his voice faltered. Reluctantly, they all stepped out into the moist air, the cold biting their skin, the gravel crunched beneath their feet, each step echoing ominously in the thickening fog. "Stay close," Jason said, trying to mask his anxiety as they ventured further into the street. The shadows danced menacingly around them, an absurd sense of being watched creeping into his bones. As they rounded the corner, the lights from an old, dust-covered diner flickered to life like some dream spell ultimately undone. A flicker of hope surged through Jason. "Look! Maybe someone's inside." But as they approached, the diner's flickering neon sign stated its ominous slogan, "Welcome to the last stop." "What a charming name," Amelia muttered under her breath. Jason felt a knot tighten in his stomach. They pushed through the door, and a jingle echoed through the empty space like a bell tolling a warning. Inside, dust-coated sticky tables and chairs, untouched menus lay strewn on the counter like forgotten relics. In one corner, a jukebox hummed with a haunting tune that seemed out of time, its age echoing sorrow in every note. "Anyone here?" his father called, his voice trembling just like the light flickered overhead. Silence was the only reply. Just as Jason was about to suggest leaving, the door rattled behind them as a cold gust swept through. Outside, a figure emerged from the mist, the old man they had seen before. Jason's breath hitched. He stood motionless, eyes locking onto them with a predatory glare, a smirk creeping across his face that was more chilling than welcoming. What did he want? "Get out," the old man whispered, his voice barely more than a breeze, yet it rang in Jason's ears with urgency. "Run!" Jason yelled, but before they could so much as move, the jukebox screeched to a halt, plunging them into silence once more. All at once, the diner's ambience shifted, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Suddenly, shadows surged in from all corners, twisting into shapes that grasped at reality, threatening to pull them into a void. Jason felt the weight of the fear bearing down, his mind screaming to flee as the old man's figure loomed closer, each step he took echoing with sinister intent. "Leave while you still can." Jason exchanged frantic glances with his family. Could they escape this nightmare before Hollow Ridge consumed them? The ground beneath them quaked with malevolent energy, pulling them into the depths of despair. Where would they go? What would happen next? Would they be trapped in the grasp of this cursed town forever? Jason's heart raced, pumping adrenaline through his veins like wildfire. A primal urge to survive ignited within him. He glanced back, the old man's twisted smile rippling through the haze. It was like a mirage, an indelible mark that branded itself into Jason's thoughts. "Move!" he shouted, grabbing Amelia's wrist, pulling her towards the back of the diner. But as they rounded the counter, the air turned thick and oppressive, wrapping around them like a layer of darkness. The shadows deepened, swirling and shifting, almost sentient, grasping at their ankles as if trying to pull them under. "Where do we go?" Amelia gasped, her voice shaky. The fear brought tears to her eyes, reflecting the dim light like two glimmering beacons in the gloom. "Anywhere but here." Jason yelled back, looking for an escape. The diner's back door loomed ahead, its wooden frame appearing almost warped, as if it had been pulled apart by unseen hands. With a surge of courage, they bolted towards the door, but the shadows extended their noxious fingers, clawing at their legs. It was like running through molasses, each step dragging them back. Jason grunted, forcing forward, every instinct screaming at him to keep moving. "Jason, hurry!" His mother's voice pierced through the chaos. She clutched his father's arm, panic realigning their sense of safety, or what little they had left. Suddenly, the jukebox flared back to life, an eerie tune rising from the brink, the notes twisted and warped, echoing through the silence like ghosts lamenting long-lost memories. The faint glow of neon light began to pulse in sync with the beat, casting an otherworldly glow over the diner's interior, twisting the familiar into something grotesque. "Over here," his father shouted, pointing towards a narrow hallway at the back. The urgency in his voice fueled their desperation. Jason nodded and dragged Amelia toward it, the cold air biting at their skin, every instinct urging to escape faster. As they reached the hallway, shadows clawed at their clothes like frenzied hands. Jason yanked her inside. They stumbled through the tight corridor, breathing hard, the din of the jukebox fading behind them as they pressed deeper into darkness. "Where does this lead?" Amelia whispered, looking around nervously. It was dim, tightly enclosed, claustrophobic, an endless stretch of drab walls painted in a sickly yellow hue. They passed doorways that yawned open, revealing glimpses of despair laid bare, faded photographs, abandoned tables, and remnants of life scattered like echoes in time. "Just keep moving," Jason hissed, grounding his fear. They paused at the first door they came across, a heavy wooden slab devoid of any markings. Jason hesitated, glancing back down the murky corridor. The haunting ambience hung thick, and for a brief moment, a flicker of doubt nudged at him. "Should we try to find a window?" Amelia's voice trembled as she leaned closer, clutching his arm. Behind them, an echo reverberated, a scraping sound, deep and drawn out, like fingernails against wood. The unmistakable sound of something slithering closer. The shadows thickened, dark tendrils unfurling with sinister intent. "Open the door." His father's command cut through the tension. It was no longer about choice, survival called, and they had little time to ponder what lay behind. With a forceful shove, Jason flung the door open. It creaked ominously, as if protesting their intrusion, revealing a dim room shrouded in darkness. Inside, crumbling furniture lay toppled, and the air was heavy with a stale scent of decay. But amid the wreckage, something gleamed against the wall, a metal door, ironclad and bolted. "Is that a way out?" His mother gasped, hope tinging her voice, but it carried a weight too heavy to be true. "Maybe," Jason murmured, drawing closer, hesitating as the ominous scraping approached. Every instinct screamed for him to turn away, to retreat into the corridor, but he felt a force tugging him forward, a morbid curiosity, or perhaps a call that wasn't his own. As Jason reached for the heavy metal door, it suddenly swung open with a deep groan, revealing a chilling abyss beyond, a pit that seemed to breathe in tandem with their fear. The darkness beckoned, filled with whispers that drifted on the edge of sanity, calling them further into the unknown. "Go back!" Amelia shrieked, pulling him back. But as the shadows spilled over the threshold, constricting around them like a tightening noose, Jason felt paralyzed, caught between the lure of darkness and the grasp of reality, wondering if Hollow Ridge was the end or the beginning of something far worse. What stood waiting just beyond the metal door? Would they dare step into the unknown, or would they be consumed before they had a chance to decide? The air thickened, and he realized the choice wouldn't be theirs to make for much longer. The darkness pulsed, alive and hungry, as the door to the abyss loomed before them. Jason's breath caught in his throat. "We can't stay here," he barked, pulling Amelia closer, their bodies nearly colliding. "Jason, please." Her voice was barely a whisper, trembling with dread. The shadows loomed overhead, swirling, merging into a tumultuous mass, growing thicker, hotter, like fog on a sweltering summer night. "I know." Jason snapped, fighting against the fear that choked him. The room felt smaller, closing in with every passing second. In that moment, he felt like an animal cornered, desperate to escape, while the predator drew nearer. His father stepped forward, intent in his eyes. "We need to go through. It could lead us to safety." The grim determination carved into his face seemed illogical, reckless even. Yet, amid the encroaching darkness, there was an odd sort of promise hidden within. "Are you crazy?" Amelia cried, glancing over her shoulder as the scraping grew louder, more aggressive. It echoed off the walls, a hunting call that summoned the unseen entity lurking just beyond their vision. But deep down, a sliver of resolve began to overshadow Jason's panic. He clutched the doorknob, its cold iron biting into his palm. He could feel the weight of the darkness pulling, teasing at him, as if it had a mind of its own. "Now!" he urged, twisting the handle. The door creaked open, revealing not emptiness, but a narrow, winding staircase that spiraled down into an abyss that felt ancient. A musty scent wafted up, thick with mold and despair. Amelia gasped, her body tensing. "Chris, we can't," she argued, but before she could protest further, their father rushed in, each step echoing ominously. "Stay close," he called back. With a shared glance of uncertainty, Jason and Amelia hesitated only a moment before following him down the darkened stairs, the shadows coiling tighter, eager to envelop them. The further they descended, the more Jason's thoughts whirled. What if we're playing right into its hands? He muttered, fear clenching his gut as they stepped cautiously down the rotting wooden steps. Each creak sounded like a warning, each shadow threw a heavier shroud over his disquiet. In the flickering light of a bulb overhead, they realized they were not alone. Stark silhouettes cluttered the walls, twisted shapes cast by their own shadows. Jason's heart raced as he strained to see clearer, the corners of the hidden chamber revealing something far worse. Ghostly figures were etched into the walls, faces carved in agony, frozen screams. They seemed to seep despair, mingling with the air and filling his lungs with dread. "Look!" Amelia gasped, pointing at the far end of the room, where shadows shifted against the wall. It was there their gaze fell upon a tattered sign swinging gently, as if inviting them closer. The letters were barely legible: "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here. Don't listen." Jason shouted, shaking off the heaviness clinging to his thoughts. But the words gnawed at him. What did it mean for them? Were they stepping into a nightmare from which there would be no escape? A sudden crash behind them seized their attention, the door slamming shut with a deafening clang, echoing like thunder in the cramped space. Panic ignited. "We have to find another way out," Jason cried, spinning around, catching a glimpse of something crawling up the stairs, a dark shape, sliding effortlessly as if melding with the shadows. "What did we get ourselves into?" Amelia whimpered, her voice shaky, teetering on the edge of hysteria. "We can't stop now," Jason urged, his legs already moving before his mind could catch up. They needed to push through, to find a way, any way out of this hell. "Follow me." But as he turned, the atmosphere shifted, thick with anticipation, the very shadows vibrating with a promise of unimaginable horror waiting to reveal itself. The walls seemed to close in at their backs, the once familiar stairwell now transforming into a labyrinth of despair. "What if we can't?" Amelia whispered, fear lacing every word. They rushed toward the faint glimmer of light spilling from the next door, desperation fueling their steps, but Jason couldn't shake the feeling that the real horror had only just begun. As they reached the door, he could feel the weight of someone or something watching them from the depths of the dark behind, waiting and wanting. What waited behind that door? Would it lead them to salvation, or deeper into the horrors of Hollow Ridge? The uncertainty hung like a blade over them, echoing a question no one wanted to voice. Would they dare to open it? Jason hesitated, gripping the doorframe as he peered into the light. It flickered erratically, casting ominous shadows that danced around the edges of his vision. He felt a breath, cold and whispering, sliding across the nape of his neck. "Jason, open it," Amelia urged, her voice cracking with fear. Her eyes were wide, reflecting the flickering light. "Maybe we should go back," he suggested, but the words felt feeble, lost in the encroaching darkness behind them. "No. We have to go forward," their father insisted, determination etched in the lines of his face. He stepped into the faint light, urging them onward. "We can't let it catch us." As they crossed the threshold, the air grew thick with an electric tension. The room contained no furniture, just walls lined with peeling paint that seemed to breathe, exhaling despair with every sigh. A single bulb dangled from the ceiling, casting a sickly glow, illuminating more horrifying figures etched into the walls, a grotesque gallery of despair. Face after face twisted in torment, eyes hollow and pleading as if begging for salvation. "What the hell is this place?" Jason whispered, the fear clawing at him now, more visceral than ever. Amelia's breath hitched as she stepped forward, her foot crunching on broken glass. Her eyes darted around the space, searching desperately for a clue, an escape. "There's got to be a way out, we just have to." A loud bang echoed behind them, and the sound of something undulating made each hair on Jason's arms stand on end. His heart raced as he turned to the door, confirming it had closed tightly, sealing them inside. "We're trapped," Jason shouted, panic bubbling over. "Calm down," his father barked, but his voice lacked conviction. "Look for something, anything." The walls, pulsating and alive, seemed to shrink around them, the light growing dimmer. Jason felt the shadows creeping closer, fingers of darkness brushing against his skin. "It's coming," he hissed. "Where? What?" Amelia gripped Jason's arm, her fingers trembling. There was a low moan, a sound that churned Jason's stomach. The shadows quivered, morphing into horrific shapes that lunged toward them. He stumbled backward, almost losing his footing as another crash echoed from the far side of the room. "What's happening?" Jason shouted. He couldn't stand it anymore. "We need to move." They dashed toward the far end of the room, the glow of light growing brighter as they neared a blackened doorway barely visible in the shadows. But just as they approached, a figure emerged from the darkness, a creature with elongated limbs and a face wrapped in shadow, its eyes glowing fiercely, hungry and relentless. "Run!" Jason yelled, adrenaline fueling his limbs. The creature's presence caused the very air to thicken, binding them in terror. Jason surged forward, pulling Amelia with him. The light flickered madly, illuminating the creature's grotesque form, its mouth stretching unnaturally wide as if it were about to devour them whole. They burst through the door, hearts thundering in sync with the crashing sounds behind, but as they stumbled into the next chamber, the light disappeared altogether. They fell onto cold, hard ground, the darkness engulfing them once more. "Jason?" Amelia's voice trembled, uncertain. "Where are we?" "Keep talking," he whispered back, trying to fill the silence that clawed at him. But as he focused on Amelia's voice, he realized that it was the only sound filling the oppressive void. The air shifted around them, trapping their breaths within layers of echoing fears. Then, a low chuckle resonated from the void, a malevolent sound that crawled into Jason's mind. "You have come so far, but the game is just beginning," it whispered, each word a threat that sent chills racing down his spine. "What do you mean?" He shouted into the darkness, his voice trembling with defiance, but all he received was silence, a stretched, tangible dread. As the shadows thickened, Jason gripped Amelia's hand tighter. They had no choice now. They were deeper in than ever before. Whatever was watching, was waiting. What would those sinister games entail? Would they survive the horrors lurking ahead, or were they merely pawns in a nightmarish play? The gripping unknown loomed larger than the darkness surrounding them. A cold wave washed over Jason, the air thick with something ancient and malevolent. Amelia squeezed his hand, her pulse tremoring beneath her fingers like a trapped bird. The darkness enveloped them like a suffocating quilt, each breath they took filling their lungs with dread. "Stay close," Jason whispered, even though he couldn't see anything beyond the tips of his fingers. They had lost the safety of light, and now it felt like every shadow held an unearthly promise of terror. The silence pressed down on them, heavy and pulsating, as if the void itself was alive, watching and waiting. They shuffled forward, hearts pounding, guided only by the muffled echoes of their own fears. Each step felt like a countdown to an unseen disaster. Jason strayed a little too far from Amelia and felt a sudden shift. The air crackled and buzzed, as if they were crossing an invisible barrier. "Amelia?" he called, a flicker of panic creeping into his voice. "I'm right here." She answered, but her words were swallowed quickly, replaced by an eerie hush. It was worse now. the fabric of the darkness thicker, like moving through molasses. Then came a faint sound, like whispering. Was it the walls, mocking them? Or something worse? Jason strained to catch the words, but all he heard were hushed tones that slithered into his mind and twisted his thoughts. Jason, please, make it stop. Amelia's voice trembled, laced with fear. Focus, he urged, trying to drown out the whispers. It was time to forge their own path. They began moving again, but the space shifted, rhythmically squeezing them as they pressed forward. The very ground felt unstable, swaying beneath their feet. Look! Amelia shouted suddenly, and the breath rushed out of Jason as her voice echoed sharply against the walls. He spotted something glimmering ahead, a faint outline, a flicker of light, uncertain but promising. They rushed toward it, desperation fueling their speed. The whispers crescendoed, rising to a chaotic din, fraying the edges of Jason's sanity. He pulled Amelia along, lungs burning, heart racing, pounding harder with each step closer to the source. But as they neared, the light revealed a doorway, its frame warped and twisted, as if it had been crammed into a shape that no door should ever take. The whispers morphed into guttural chants, savage and primal. The door seemed to breathe, exhaling dark tendrils that coiled around Jason's ankles, slowing him down. What the hell is that? Jason exclaimed, a shiver snaking down his spine. I don't know, but we can't stay here. Amelia pulled him, but Jason was rooted momentarily by a fear that no rational thought could dismantle. Then the door creaked open slightly, enough to reveal a glimpse of what lay beyond, an endless abyss, swirling and shifting, lit only by a revolting kind of luminescence. Shapes flitted in the shadows, grotesque and hunched, waiting for a moment of weakness. We have to go. Jason forced himself to act, yanking Amelia as the shadows began to stretch and flex, reaching for them like hungry hands. Now! They stumbled through the door, embracing the chaotic whirlpool of darkness that welcomed them. The world shifted again, twisting their surroundings into a nightmare where ground became sky and gravity unraveled. In that moment of chaos, a scream erupted, followed by a soul-wrenching laughter that merged with the whispers. Jason clutched at his head, the world spinning as he realized they were not alone. They had entered a place beyond the realm of nightmares, and their tormentors were waiting, stars in a void of misery. As darkness took another terrible form, Jason heard that familiar voice again, dripping with malice and delight. You're too late, the game has already begun. And with that, the ground fell away, plunging them into a void of swirling terror. What would their next move be? Were they to become part of this hideous game, or could they still carve a path back to light? The answer lay shrouded in the depths of the unknown. The descent felt endless, like they were slipping through the very fabric of reality. Gravity fought against them, pulling in every disorienting direction, but an unseen hand seemed to reach for them, tugging them deeper into the abyss. Jason could barely hold on to his thoughts as chaos wrapped around his mind. The sound of Amelia's scream reverberated through the silence, fading into the shadows as if even the darkness wanted to consume it. Amelia! He called out, but his voice was drowned in a tidal wave of dread. Where are you? A flicker of illumination caught his eye, a flickering glow that pulsed in the swirling darkness. He reached for it, desperate to find her, but the glow distorted, shifting away as quickly as he grasped. Panic surged through him, the overwhelming fear of losing her clawing at his chest. The more you fight, the deeper you'll fall, the echoing voice whispered, laced with sadistic amusement. Jason's heartbeat quickened as the words slithered into his mind, taunting him. Suddenly, the darkness around him solidified. He slammed into cold stone, choking on the stale air that hung heavy like a noose. The ground felt uneven underfoot, like a graveyard of bones waiting to snap back and consume him whole. Amelia! He shouted again, his voice more desperate now. I'm here, Jason. Relief washed over him briefly, but where? He spun around, scanning for her through the shadowy miasma, but all he saw were shapes dancing, mocking him in a ghoulish ballet. Don't let go. Her voice trembled, and for a moment, it seemed echoed from everywhere and nowhere. The shadows whispered back to her words, coarse and questioning. Each whisper was a threat that scraped at his sanity. Jason clenched his fists, willing himself to find her, to pull them both from this nightmare, and then he felt the sensation of something brushing against his leg. His heart leaped to his throat. He glanced downward, and the sight froze him in place. A shadowed figure loomed, its grotesque form twisting in a slow, deliberate way, its eyes two hollow pits of darkness that flowed with agony. That he stumbled back, bumping into something solid. A wall? No, it moved, fading out of view just as he turned. His breath quickened, a strangled gasp escaping his lips as the sense of dread intensified. Whatever it was hungry. Run. Now. Amelia's voice cut through the chaos. He turned just in time to see her sprinting toward him from behind a mass of shadows. She reached out, fingers brushing against his. He took her hand, fear mingling with adrenaline, but in that agonizing moment, the world around them exploded into chaos. Shadows lengthened, coiling upwards like snakes, and Jason felt the cold touch of despair creeping into his chest. What is this place? He yelled, his voice breaking. It's a game, Jason, one we didn't play by the rules, she panted, panic creeping into her tone. The shadows shifted, pushing them back toward the doorway they had come from, like a relentless current drawing them beneath the waves. Then we make our own rules. Jason shouted defiantly. He pulled Amelia close as the darkness started swirling again, the oppressive weight of it pressing down on them, thick as fog. Can we? She gasped, facing the oncoming darkness. Her courage faltered for a split second, doubt flickering in her eyes. We have to. He replied, determined. Together, they pushed against the shadows, each step a battle against the encroaching terror. But the more they advanced, the more the darkness resisted, reaching for them with slimy tendrils that grasped at their clothes, their skin. Then Jason's foot hit something solid, a mirror, cracked and covered in grime. He stumbled, pulling Amelia down with him. As he glanced up, a horrifying realization crashed over him. The reflection didn't just show them, it showed their deepest fears manifested in grotesque forms. Jason! Amelia shouted, eyes wide with terror. It's us! From within the mirror, their own faces twisted in agony, features merging with those of shadowy figures behind monsters that seemed to know their darkest secrets, laughing as they leaned closer, whispering promises of despair. Jason's blood turned to ice. We have to destroy it. But as they lifted their hands to strike, a guttural laughter erupted from the depths, echoing around them. You choose despair, it sang, mocking them with twisted melodies that shredded their resolve. With a final surge of desperation, they hurled themselves at the mirror, shattering it into fragments, each piece reflecting terror back at them. The shadows recoiled, the laughter morphing into screams of rage as the darkness began to tear away. Yet just as they thought they might escape, Jason realized the truth: they weren't free yet. The darkness was only retreating momentarily, and something darker, more sinister was waiting for them on the other side. What awaited just beyond the break? Was it salvation or another kind of horror stalking them? As the fragments spiraled away, answers began to swirl in the air, hinting at something more dreadful. The mirror shattered, its pieces glinting like jagged teeth scattered across the floor. Jagged reflections of Jason and Amelia flickered in each shard, their faces warped, fear etched deep in their features. As the darkness writhed and recoiled, a heavy silence fell, but it was deceptive. It was the calm before the storm. With a sudden screech, a shadow surged back, coalescing from the depths of the void, its form larger and more menacing than before. Jason's heart sank as he recognized it. It was the same grotesque figure that had brushed against him, and it was angrier now, furious for the destruction of its precious mirror. Run! Amelia shouted, her voice piercing through the stillness. They took off, sprinting as the darkness lunged, tendrils snapping at their heels like ravenous dogs. Each step echoed in their ears, a deafening reminder of the gravity of their peril. Jason felt his heart thud against his ribcage. They raced through a twisting corridor, the walls practically alive, pressing in and threatening to swallow them whole. The place had become an unrecognizable maze, every turn leading them deeper into the labyrinth of fear. "We need to find a way out," he gasped, breath hitching in his throat. But where was the exit? Where could they possibly escape this nightmare? The shadows whispered around them, coaxing him, promising secrets and darkness, each voice blending into a crescendo of dread that would drive him mad if he lingered too long. Suddenly, Amelia stumbled, falling into a pool of darkness that rippled around her. "Jason! Help!" she screamed, reaching out. He lunged to grab her hand, but the shadows were quick, dragging her deeper into their web. Panic painted his vision red. "No! Grab my hand!" He yanked her free, pulling her back just as tendrils snaked around her ankle, hissing with fury. Jason felt the darkness twist in upon itself, pulsing hungry. They pressed forward, dragging each other away from the encroaching doom. "Look!" Amelia shouted, pointing toward a faint light glimmering in the distance. Hope ignited in Jason's chest as they spotted an archway, its edges glowing with a strange, eerie shimmer. Was it a way out? A cruel trick? "I don't care. We have to try," he yelled, sprinting towards it. As they neared, the light flickered like a dying star, illuminating the grotesque faces that pressed in from the shadows. Angry and howling in despair, with new determination, they burst through the archway, stumbling into what appeared to be an abandoned room, walls adorned with faded wallpaper peeling away like the last remnants of sanity. In the center stood a heavy, wooden table, and on it an ancient book, pages yellowed and filled with cobwebs. "Jason, wait!" Amelia tugged at his arm as he reached for it. "We don't know what that is." But curiosity was overpowering. "Maybe it can help us." "It has to." He opened it slowly, the musty smell of aged paper wafting up, carrying whispers as if something was alive within its pages. Words swirled, dancing before his eyes. The text seemed to reveal their fate, but it was written in a language he couldn't comprehend. Fragments began to emerge, a history of torment, tales of sacrifices. Each word fueled the ominous energy around them, heightening the shadows' rage, feeding the darkness that wanted nothing more than to consume them. "Close it. Jason, close it." Amelia's voice was shrill, filled with dread. The shadows coiled tighter, pressing against the walls, their faces morphing into a collage of horror that threatened to engulf Jason whole. He slammed the book shut, but the shadows roared in defiance. Walls shook, the building itself quaked as if protesting their presence. "What did we do?" he yelled, his heart pounding against his chest. Everything around them began to crack and splinter, fissures spiderwebbing across the walls and floor. The light flickered wildly, threatening to be snuffed out. Jason turned to Amelia, her face pale, eyes wide with fear mirroring his own. "What's coming?" she whispered, trembling. He didn't have the answer. But beneath them, the ground rumbled ominously, and the shadows charged closer, hungry and relentless. Then, a voice emerged from the wreckage. It was dark, ominous, thick as the surrounding shadows. "You cannot escape it," intoned, each syllable a chilling echo that filled the room and echoed in their bones. Jason's mind raced. "We have to go now." He grabbed Amelia's hand once more, but this time, a sudden wave of dread pulled at him, a realization slicing through the chaos. They had triggered something, unleashed something that would not stop until they either surrendered or were consumed. The ground beneath erupted, and the world spun into a dark whirlpool of nightmarish sounds and fury. What awaited them now? What horror had they awakened? As they plunged into the depths, only one thought sprang to his mind: it was merely the beginning. Within the darkness, something even more sinister stirred, watching, waiting. What did it want? Would they have the strength to face it? The endless darkness swallowed them whole, weaving around their limbs like a serpent, constricting tighter with each heartbeat. Jason and Amelia barely had time to gasp before they were thrust into a blinding light that pierced through the blackness, illuminating the figures that had been lurking in the shadows. They stumbled into a vast, twisted room where the walls writhed like living flesh, the air thick with the fetid stench of decay. Fear clawed deeply in Jason's chest as he caught sight of what had remained concealed before, twisted faces, remnants of those who had been trapped in this purgatory, their eyes wide and mouths forever frozen in silent screams. Amelia's voice broke, trembling as she grasped his arm. "What is this place?" He swallowed hard, each gulp a struggle against the bile rising in his throat. I don't know," he stammered, feeling despair settle like icy fingers around his heart. In the center of the room lay a grotesque altar, surrounded by shadows that flickered and danced with a life of their own. A pulsing darkness swirled above it, an entity formed from fear and despair, hungry for their essence. But it wasn't just the altar that hovered ominously. The room itself felt like a living being, its breath pushing against them, urging them closer so that they could be part of its meal. "That's it's feeding on fear," he said, anger mixing with terror. "Then let us not give it what it wants," Amelia cried, pulling him back toward the entrance, a chance at escape. But remembrance struck Jason like lightning. "The book!" he shouted, racing toward the shattered fragments littering the floor. Those forbidden words, they had conjured all of this. He mustered his strength, kneeling amid the jagged pieces, sifting through them. He felt a surge of power course through him as he recognized a few familiar symbols etched in the glass shards. "If we can find a way to reverse it." Flashes of images wrapped around him, memories not of the road trip, but of what brought him here, the stories of lost travelers, their souls unable to break free from the darkness surrounding them. "Amelia, we can do this. Help me read it." But just then, the shadows started to coil tighter around them, rising from the ground like tides, the whispers growing louder, drowning out everything else. "You cannot leave, you belong to us, no!" Jason roared, picking up the largest shard, the flickering light casting a twisted reflection of his face, determined and resolute. He shouted, "We have to flip the mirror. It reflects fear and despair, but it can also reflect hope." The air thickened with a sinister laughter that echoed throughout the twisted room, mocking their endeavor. "Hope? You think you can escape with hope? It is your fear that binds you. Not if we stand united." Jason cried, and with all the strength he had left, he raised the shard high above his head, its refracted light shimmering as it caught the dim glow of the altar. "I want to let it take us. What if it doesn't work?" Amelia shouted above the rising chaos, her eyes glistening with tears. "What if we do nothing?" Jason countered fiercely, determination surging through him. "We have to try." With that, they hurled the shard against the altar. Glass crashed against the surface, sending shards spiraling out like stars piercing a dark night. A vibrant light erupted, cascading across the room and splattering against the faces of the lost souls, awakening them. Jason felt the ground quake, the shadows whining as the light expanded, forcing them back. "This light is the hope!" Amelia yelled, raising her hands as if to channel the energy. The light brightened, swirling and transforming into radiant threads that connected them all, weaving a new tapestry of love, warmth, and unyielding spirit. "Run!" Jason shouted, gripping Amelia's hand tightly. They dashed through the beams of light, following the path that unspooled from the altar, fighting against the angry, grasping shadows. With one last surge of adrenaline, they threw themselves into the light, a great roar shaking the very foundation of the room as they broke through the plane of darkness and tumbled into the real world. Gasping for breath, they found themselves on the side of the road, the sun shining brightly above them, illuminating the morning dew. Jason blinked in disbelief, his heart pounding with the thrill of survival. Did we make it?" Amelia erupted into laughter, relief washing over her like a gentle tide. "We did. Look, Jason." She pointed to the blue van parked nearby, its familiar outline grounding them once more in reality. "We got out, we made it." Jason's chest heaved with hedonistic joy. Relief cascaded into him like a waterfall, washing away the lingering shadows of dread. Their parents rushed towards them, eyes wide with worry. "We thought we lost you," his father breathed, wrapping them in a fierce embrace. Jason and Amelia exchanged knowing glances, a bond solidified through terror. They had faced the dark, and the darkness had failed. As they climbed back into the van, Amelia leaned against Jason, her voice tinged with awe. "You think we'll ever talk about this?" "Maybe," he chuckled, shaking off the remnants of fear. "But not for a while. Let's just enjoy the road." The van rolled back onto the highway, carefree laughter echoing through the air once more. The road stretched ahead, the possibilities endless, the sunlight bright, and the shadows far behind them. Now, if you enjoyed this journey through horror and survival, you need to subscribe to the channel immediately. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support, and flood the comments section with your reactions and theories. What did you think of the ending? Finally, don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You never know who might need a glimpse of hope after darkness. Let us uplift one another as we journey through this unpredictable world together.